You're listening to Big Blend Radio's English Connection Show with Glynn Burrows, owner of Norfolk Tours. Hey, everybody. Today, Glynn Burrows is taking us fossil hunting along the coast of Norfolk, England. I never thought about going fossil hunting, and I don't know if it's legal very many places. And he's got a great article about it, so check out the show link. The link in the show notes. I can get there. But it's really quite fascinating because Norfolk, England has some very ancient history. We've talked a lot about history, ruins, castle ruins, all of that, but I think this is the oldest we've been. Glynn, how old do you feel? Actually, this
Yeah,
makes me
yeah.
feel very young, actually, talking
Well,
about
yeah.
all this today.
The thing is with fossils is you're talking millions. That's it's so difficult to actually visualize how old some of these things are. But I mean, for instance, in Norfolk, they found the oldest human footprints north of Africa. So, Africa has obviously got lots of really, really old human footprints, but the second oldest human footprints found in the world, I think, have been found fossilized on a Norfolk beach. And you're talking millions. I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
were humanoids, but they weren't, humanoids like us. They weren't Homo sapiens, so to speak, but they were recognizable as humans. So they'd say. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not into that sort of thing really.
Cavemen.
But yeah, but I mean, you're talking millions. You're not
Mm-hmm.
talking the Romans, you're not talking the Egyptians, you're not talking the Greeks. You're talking millions of years ago, while we were still developing actually as human
As he,
beings.
exactly, it's kind of wild, isn't it? And then you think about how life life was back then, and going through your article, what made me laugh is you had hyenas and hippos and things like
Yeah,
that in England, and the mammoth, the big mammoth was found there.
mammoth. Yeah, I mean the mammoth was actually discovered on the coast in North Norfolk. There was a storm, and as you can see in the cliffs behind you,
Mm-hmm.
if you've got a cliff that get washed up by the sea, then if there's a bad storm, the sea really bashes the cliff, and
Mm-hmm.
then parts of the cliff fall off. Well, that's basically what happened at Runton, and there were some bones that were sticking out of the cliff, and somebody saw
Wow.
them, thought they look a bit different, so they called in the experts, and they said, yes, this is a mammoth.
Wow.
So they excavated the Runton mammoths. I mean, that is something special. I mean, you were saying about whether it's legal. It's legal in most places to just walk along the beach, and if you see a fossil, you can pick it up. You're not allowed to walk on some beaches. So make sure that you're on a
A
beach that you're
public
allowed to
beach.
go on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you are not allowed to go near the cliffs or on the cliffs. So
Oh,
you're
it's
not allowed
dangerous.
to start with your pickaxe and start
Mm-hmm.
hacking away at the cliffs, because they are very fragile and also very, very dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because
I remember them
if
being very, being out in England and any of the areas like those cliffs, even the ones here, there's some that you're bye bye.
Yeah. I mean, if you're underneath a part of the cliff that when it falls down, you're dead, you know.
Mm.
So they do say, walk away from the base of the cliff, but you can, fossil hunt. Obviously, don't take a wheelbarrow and take half the beach home with you. We're talking, a
No
couple of bits
respect.
you can put in your pocket. It's all about
Yeah.
being sensible and respectful,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, you can actually go fossil hunting.
Now, where West Brunton, where this is, and the picture behind, and I just see there's a dog there. I don't
Yeah,
know what that dog is doing. Maybe he's looking for a bone. He's going,
you
I
never
want a
know.
mammoth bone, or I don't know. Maybe he's found a fire hydrant. I don't know.
Not there.
but but when you're out there, I mean, when you find something like that, like the mammoth, do they kind of corner it off and protect it so people don't start saying, "Ooh, I,
Yes.
I wonder if I can find more of it,"
Yeah. I mean, once they realized what it was, then it was protected and it was excavated properly by the proper people to excavate them sort of things. That's why they say that they don't want people to be too close to the cliffs, because if they start to excavate on their own and they're not experts at excavation, number one, they could damage the fossils. Number two, they could kill themselves. And number three, they could damage the cliff, which is not what you want. So it's all about just picking up the odd bit on the beach. And
Mm.
and then if say, for instance, you picked up a fossil that was something really special, um, and like any other archaeology, if you report what you find to the museums, if you found something really special that and you know where you found it, which is another thing about archaeology, know where you find these things, then they can say, wow, we need to go and have a look at that area because there could be something special, you know.
Mm.
So it's all about keeping in mind, what is the accepted thing. Read a couple of books,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
go on a website about fossil hunting and know what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do.
Mm.
But the main thing, is keep safe and be
Hmm.
sensible, because the last thing we want is for a cliff like that thing behind you to fall on top of somebody.
Exactly. And at the same time, too, some of these things are incredibly valuable. The fossils actually belong in a museum or
Yeah,
something that everyone can enjoy and look at and learn from.
yeah, yeah.
In this country, we have people going out with those little metal detector things, and some places it's legal, some places it's not.
No,
I think it's cool to go out looking and there's so much to learn from it. And I think it's a
yes,
cool way to get kids to be observant. And kids are more observant than us adults, aren't they? And they go
they
out,
are.
but to get their interest spiked on history. And
Yes.
it
I
just
mean,
is so humbling.
my granddaughter, who's 5, actually came home from school the other day and said, I've been learning. I can't remember the girl's name. The woman's name. She was a fossil hunter, but she said, I've been learning about this woman, and she was a paleontologist.
Oh,
Well,
wow, that's a big word.
yeah, a 5-year-old coming out with the word of paleontologist. But, she's now interested in fossils. And as it happened, my dad, he found some fossils in the garden when he was digging. And there was one sitting on my mum's windowsill the other day. And my granddaughter is she's now borrowed it to take to school, you know. But it's that sort of thing. It's getting their interest fired up,
Mm.
isn't it? And to
Yeah.
be interested in things and to realize that, history is all around us.
Mm.
And as long as you follow the rules and you've got permission and you're supposed to be there, you treat the land, the seashore, the cliffs with respect,
Hmm.
then it's great. We can all
Well,
learn.
for those who are interested in history, like I know people who are interested in fossils are usually interested in gems and minerals. It's kind of a
Yeah,
whole thing
yeah,
together. And it's about Earth. It's geology. If you're interested in
yes,
geology and you find a fossil, man, you are like on top of the world, right?
yeah, quite.
Um, some of the places we've been to, one of the this is a park that is rarely visited, and it still sits with me. This park, it's in Colorado near a town called Cripple Creek, and Cripple Creek was a mining town,
Right.
and so something's going on with geology wise, right? And down the road is a park called Florissant Fossil Beds, and Florissant, it was like this giant boneyard of fossils,
Yeah,
but human beings started rape, pillaging, and plundering and taking everything by the carload. And that's how
yeah,
it became protected as a national monument. But when you
yeah,
go out there, they have fossilized sequoia trees. Like just these, because back then they had sequoia trees there. Now you can only find them in the Sierra Nevada region of California. But then, so it was really mind blowing to see this. And I know people who travel the world for this kind of thing. So I can
yeah.
see someone coming to you and saying, Glynn, take me to the beaches. I can go find stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean that is the sort of thing that we can do. I mean, it when we were in Canada, we went to I can't remember the name of the place, whether it was somewhere near Revelstoke. I can't remember, but we went to a place where there was loads of dinosaur skeletons had been found.
Mm.
And it is an interesting thing to do whenever you are, wherever you are in the world. You know, if you visit somewhere and they have had a massive, discovery of fossils or Roman pottery or whatever, it's always good just to see what is going on in the area that you're visiting. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I mean, if anyone wanted to just walk along the beach and see what they found, you know, we can arrange it.
I
It is all about doing what people want to do, isn't it?
well, it's also shows how connected we all are. For you to have hyenas in your backyard from back in the day, right? I love that because hyenas are one of my favorite animals, and I used to love sleeping at night listening to them, at night
Right.
in Africa,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they make this really crazy woo sound at night. Anyway, so we don't need to do that for people.
How do they go? How do they go?
Ooh, like they do. It's kind of like this backwards howl, and
Oh,
and then
right.
you'll hear the jackals go like kind of coyote style.
Right.
Anyway, I was thinking about this when I was reading your article. I know this is going to get weird, but why wouldn't we get weird on the show?
We normally
Um,
do.
well, when you think about the stories, the legends like Merlin and Arthur, and all of that, there was always these weird creatures involved in these in mythology.
Yes.
And I wonder about like, you know, one day not all the hyenas just didn't all die. So now they're in Africa, but we were all connected at that time. The earth moved and changed, right? As it
Yes.
is right now with climate change. I mean, right now you're getting vineyards in England. What?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
climate change, well, that has some possibility. There's these changes. So I kind of feel like we're going through all these evolutions and we forget that sometimes. And so maybe there was like one or two hyenas left, and those people from ancient times saw those animals, and that became part of the lore, the stories. But because some of them, when you hear these stories that have been passed down, sound like a hyena or sound like a jackal or sound like something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think back to like, what if you had lions? Because look at England, all about lions. I know people, you guys
Well, we
went
did.
over to Africa for sure.
We did.
You
We
guys
did.
went everywhere.
I
So
mean, we had all sorts. I mean, we had hyenas, beavers, big cats, obviously, like lions, saber-toothed
no,
tigers,
that's right, saber-toothed tiger. Yeah, yeah.
horses, rhinoceros
You
even.
had rhinos in England.
Yeah, yeah, and elephants, and obviously mammoths. But you see, with the changing of the um, landforms, things couldn't then move. As soon as England
Yeah.
got split off from the continent, things couldn't move around as much as they did before.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a bit like Australia. Australia was completely on its own after donkey's years ago, millennia ago. So that's why Australia has got its own ecosystems and animals that only exist in
Right.
Australia.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, with England, we used to have all these animals because we were connected to Europe,
Yeah.
literally, literally connected. Um, and also, I mean, we went through the Ice Age, we went through different sort of hot ages, for want of a better word. So we have had all different types of animals, and they're
Mm-hmm.
all left in the fossil layers. So
Mm-hmm.
that is how they were recorded, and it's amazing.
The ice age is interesting because where we are right now, I think we're in it.
Yeah,
Um,
you seem as
but
if you are.
in Oregon, well, actually, but there is a like a glacial ice trail up in, between Canada, Washington State, Oregon. I think it actually even goes all the way to Wisconsin, but it's
Right.
where this glacial ice was years and
Hmm.
years ago. And I was going,
Yeah.
and now we had these big ice storms in Oregon and across the country. I mean, even Texas got it, and it just went, it's crazy. So, it's climate change. But then I'm going, well, maybe these places are trying to revert back to what they were. I mean, how do we know that I mean, I know we've sped up things with the environment, but
Yeah.
how do we not know that Mother Nature is like, hey, it's time for you to have your ice age area back again. I'm putting her back. How do we
Well,
know?
it's something that I've always been intrigued by.
Hmm.
in that if ever you look at a map of, say, for instance, just a map of East Anglia, where I live, if you look at all the pieces of land that we have reclaimed from the sea, we have lost about the same amount of land by the sea encroaching onto the land.
Mm.
So that does make me think, is Mother Nature saying, okay, if you're going to take that bit of land and you're going to make that into good farmland, then I'm going to nick some of your other land a little bit further down the coast?
Yeah.
Because it does look as if, when we reclaim a piece of land a little bit
Yeah.
further around the coast, we're losing a piece of land.
It's tit
So
for tat.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And you just don't know. I mean, when we were in Canada, we went to a glacier, and we went into the museum beside the glacier, and when you could see how far that glacier had gone back, it was unbelievable how much it had shrunk, you know,
Yep.
just recently, how much of the actual really the permafrost,
Hmm.
the really, really
Hmm.
old glacier, yes, it goes back every year, and yes, it grows every winter, but over the last sort of century or so, the distance that it's gone back completely was unbelievable.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It is obviously changing,
Hmm.
and it is quite frightening, really,
It's
when you see it
frightening,
in
but
action.
it's interesting too because I think it's reminding us that we are all connected. That's it all brings it back to we're all connected somewhere, somehow.
Yes,
And
yeah, and
this idea
nature is
that we're
in
not
charge.
doesn't
Nature's in
make sense.
charge.
Oh, she is. She is. And she is a woman. Yes. It
Yeah,
is Mother Nature, after all. So, but I think, there is this connection. And so I kind of feel like sometimes, we talk about deja vu and things. And you see, now I'm getting weirder. That when we have these weird feelings of being somewhere at some point,
yeah.
it could have been, you know, we could have been. Maybe we were. Maybe we don't really know. And I find that stuff like that's just fascinating to me because I don't want to be closed-minded to
Yeah,
what really could have happened. And when you go and you find fossils, it's like it's proof of existence, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's
And I
absolute
mean,
proof of that.
when you pick up something that has lain in the ground for millions of years, that is beyond people's
Yeah,
thought.
we
It's like saying that the sun is 93 million miles away. You know,
it's
you,
not
you can't
tangible.
think about that, can you? You can't
Yeah.
think of you can't
It's like
picture it.
billionaires. How can you even think
Yeah.
about, when they
Well,
have all that
especially
money, you
in
know?
England, a billion is a million million. In America, it's 1,000 million.
Oh
But
boy, see.
a real billion is a million million. Well, when I say, when I was at
But it's
school.
it, yeah, it's not, but we can't really put it into tangible
No,
perspectives,
no,
you
you
know?
can't.
But now with the fossils and the mammoth, I wanted to ask for those coming over to England to see you, right? And you're going to take them around. Can we go see the mammoth somewhere?
Yeah, there is a good display in Norwich Castle, but at the moment, Norwich Castle is closed, or parts of it is closed because they're renovating the
Oh,
castle
okay.
itself, the actual keep. They're renovating it, and they're putting it back to how it should have been when it was a medieval palace. So that will be really, it should be done this year, actually. So I'm
Oh,
really looking
cool.
forward to seeing what they're doing. But yes, there is a display all about the mammoth. There's also a display in Cromer Museum, which is just up the road from where it was discovered. So yes, you can actually see
Mm.
the mammoth, and bits of it, in the museums in Norfolk. But for me, it is more about just walking along a beach and seeing if I find a bit, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because when I went to Canada and I went to the dinosaur museums, it was fascinating because I was seeing dinosaur skeletons, but it's in a museum, it's in a false setting. It's
Mm-hmm.
not the same as actually finding it yourself. So the experience of actually discovering a little shell or a fossilized whatever, you know, that is the exciting thing, because it's like when I do go metal detecting, or when I do look for Roman pottery, to think that I'm the first person to hold this thing in my hand for 2000 years or whatever.
That's
You know,
amazing.
that is what
Oh,
it's all about. It's not like going to a museum where you're looking at something in a case, in a display
yeah.
unit. If you're actually looking at walking along a field and you pick up a piece of Roman pottery and you think, I'm the first person to hold that for over a
Oh, that's
thousand.
trippy. You've got the direct connection.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and some
Mhm.
I have actually found Roman pottery with fingerprints and thumbprints in them. And when you
That's
think that
trippy.
somebody 1,800 years ago, 2,000 years ago, actually put their thumbprint on that pot,
Mm.
it's a woo
That is
feeling.
a woo-woo thing. That is a
It
woo-woo.
really is. But
Well,
when
yeah,
you look
you,
at
yeah.
fossils, you're talking about millions.
I mean, that's yeah, that's really amazing. And it's amazing to me, like the fossils you have in the picture behind you are like snails, snail
Yes,
shells. And yet those things are still going on today. We still have snails with snail shells like
yes.
that.
Well,
And we're still creating them, you
most
know?
of the ones behind me are, I think they're called ammonites, and they were mainly living in the sea.
Mm,
But yeah, exactly what you say. There's still things on, at the moment that are very similar.
mm,
And a lot of the things that you find in the fossil record, actually the descendants are still here.
wow.
Like these shells, these shellfish and things. They're still going around on the planet today, but just a little bit different. It is totally amazing.
I find it fascinating because, it's we still have like here we have alligators and crocodiles. We have crocodiles on the in the Everglades. So you can find both alligators and crocodiles in the
Yeah,
Everglades. And
yeah,
and it's only on one side of the Everglades in Florida. But they're that ancient. And so whenever
yes,
I think that's why I have a fascination about them is just looking at their skin and how
yeah.
they're just you're looking at an ancient being and
You're
it's
looking
like
at a dinosaur, aren't you, really?
you are looking at a dinosaur. And the same thing with cockroaches, but that I don't have that joy about them. For some reason, they just don't, get me excited like
No.
an alligator because it's like, how far does their family history go? Like we talk about
Yes,
family history for humans, but how
yeah.
far does that one alligator go back? And same with birds. And I think people that are interested in birds and are also interested in fossils because birds are flying dinosaurs. They
Yes,
are.
yes,
Snakes, the reptile world, and
yeah,
even, they say the insects and the spiders are going to be the last ones left. I
yes,
believe it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you look at birds and you see some of the fossils that have been discovered of the running dinosaurs, the ones that used to run along a lot, they basically are a bird skeleton, but without
Mm,
the wings,
yeah.
without the feathers. But some of the fossils actually, they are so amazingly detailed that you can actually see feathers on some of these
Mm.
early fossils. The detail in these fossils is just mind blowing.
Well, I saw a fossil when we were at that Florissant, national monument in Colorado. There's flies and the detail of the fly. But what really got me was hydrangeas. That
Yeah, the
got me
plants.
because
Yeah,
I'm going, the hydrangea is like in everyone's garden. It's been modified from what it was in the wild, growing naturally to what we want in our garden, so that Mrs. Bucket could plant the
quite.
bouquets. But so to me, that's amazing when you look at the plants, the fossilized, because they're still here. So that's another like family tree, literally. Um,
Yeah.
that
I mean,
goes,
I've seen in lots of museums just fossilized ferns.
oh,
Ferns are
yes,
really
that's
ancient,
amazing.
and leaves, just
Hmm.
plants. And to think that something as fragile as a plant could be recorded in the fossil record, it's basically that it just lays down, the oxygen goes out, gets filled up with silt and sand, and then you got a record of it. It's like a negative, I think, from what I can understand.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but it's amazing that something so fragile as a leaf or as a feather, how they can be recorded in stone, and
And on its own. I mean, how nature did it. It's like its own tombstone with its body there,
yeah, yeah, it is
in a
totally
way.
amazing.
So you say that so going on the coast is a really good place, and then you can go look in tide pools. Can you find fossils in the actual tide pools?
Yeah, I mean, you can find fossils anywhere in fact, you can find it inland because a lot of inland used to be underwater anyway.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
how the planet moves around and shifts. You've got places now that are well inland that used to be part of the sea, but you've also got the where the beaches are so good for fossil hunting is because of the erosion of the cliffs.
Mm,
And that's what it is. You see, the sea is washing the cliff faces away,
mm-hmm.
and they tumble down the side of those cliffs and they end up on the beach. So that is why the cliffs are such a well, the beaches underneath the cliffs are the places that you're going to find a lot of fossils because, not
Yeah,
being funny, if they are left for very long, they will just end up as sand
yeah.
because the erosion of the sea, working backwards and forwards, will just break it all up, and they
Mm-hmm.
will disappear. I mean, the footprints that were found at Haysborough on the coast, the human footprints, um, they were destroyed by Mother Nature
Mm.
because as soon as they became exposed, they were literally exposed to the elements, and they were washed away.
Oh,
You know,
wow. So we can't see them.
oh no, they're not there anymore because
Well, where?
the constant washing
Mm-hmm.
in and out of the sea just wore it away.
Oh,
So it is here today, gone tomorrow, basically.
well, wow. So we better all get out there. See, and to me, it's just good to go for a walk on the beach anyway and keep your eyes peeled, you know?
Yeah.
That's
We
that's
we
the
always every Christmas we either go on Boxing Day or on New Year's Day, we go and walk along the beach just to
mm.
blow the cobwebs away, you know.
New Year's Day is perfect to do it. Just kind of
Oh,
a
it is.
great way to bring it in, you know? But just to walk on the beach is to me, I always, whenever you walk on the beach, I'm like, I'm standing at the edge of the earth, you know,
Yes.
if except for I do believe the earth is round. I'm not one of those don't that's a whole other show. And that's like that's a show with a big rant. I don't understand people who believe the world, like, what is wrong with you? It's impossible, but you are at the edge of the place that you're at the edge of your country.
Yes.
You're at the edge of a continent here. So whenever I'm at the beach, I'm just like, I'm on the edge.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
like it, you know.
Yeah, and you
The
can't
the
you can't see any further because you fall off the edge anyway. So
Right, yeah, exactly, right. That's what the horizon is. It's like the cutoff point. Yeah. When we were in South Africa, we were very lucky to go to the tip of Africa. There's 2 points. There's, the Cape Horn and everything, but there's two places that they call the tip. One is where Vasco da Gama landed, and the other one is the actual geological end of the continent, which we got to walk, like, as I almost went South African, then walk
oh
to
yeah,
the almost to the edge, and you can see the two oceans crash against each other and meet, and it's like, dang, like if you slipped and fell, you're dead. That's how powerful the ocean, the two seas meeting. And it was crazy because it was an area where there was baboons everywhere, and they would chase you for your food, and baboons are not the most friendliest of, you
no,
know no, they show their teeth and you run like hell. But
yeah,
I mean, it was just so windy, and so, whenever you go out to a lighthouse, there's always wind wherever they put
yes,
them. You
yes,
know, it's like that. But it was just so powerful. I'll never forget that. I will never. It was, talk about humbling. You just realize Mother Nature is just incredible. Like, even here, when we're driving and seeing all these icicles and frozen waterfalls, it's scary to drive through, but I'll never take. I at the same time really enjoyed it, because
yes,
when will I see that again in my life, right? This just You're just driving. going, there's a frozen waterfall right there with different colors because it was reflecting the light.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
amazing, amazing what
yes.
Mother Nature does. And to preserve it, you think about these places with ice that it's part of the preservation. I mean,
Mother Nature is just so spectacular. I mean, not being funny, you're saying about ice. That is another thing that is here today, gone tomorrow. You know,
mm-hmm,
ice is so amazing and so artistic to look at, to just to see how it's formed and how the water drips down it and how it cuts a channel,
mm-hmm,
all of those sort of things. But they're constantly moving. I mean, something like the Grand Canyon, I've never been there, obviously,
mm,
but something like the Grand Canyon is constantly moving. It is
yes.
constantly wearing away and constantly changing.
Well,
And
it's changing for big time now because it doesn't have as much water. The Colorado River is going away,
right,
slowly, and because humans messed with it. But that plateau, which I've driven and hiked in a lot of, I've been from the headwater to the end, like the top to the bottom in this country, not in the Mexico portion of Colorado River. But that plateau, the geology is astounding. You're talking
yeah,
about places like Arches and National Park and these places. I mean, the geology changes, and it's all that erosion and that wind, and it
yes,
does get the ice, like you're talking about. Everything when you go out there and you see it, it's going to be changed in 10 years. It's going to be changed.
yes, yes. And that is the amazing thing that I find, that we look at, for instance, the cliff behind you. It has morphed into so many different things before it has got to what it is today. You know,
Mm-hmm.
one point in history it was underwater, another point under history it was under ice, another
Mm.
point in history it was home to elephants and tigers and rhinos, and now it's just a cliff on the edge of Norfolk and it's fallen to pieces. But the constant change is something that is a bit surreal to think about.
Mm.
And when you consider that, again, getting back to the fossils, we're talking millions of years ago, yet we can also find in the same cliffs the remains of the Romans when they were here. You can
Yes.
find remains of, the Victorians when they
Mm-hmm.
had houses on the cliffs. You can find plastic that's washed up from the sea or fallen down the cliff face from people who had a picnic on there last week. But it's all about change and just trying to get it into your head that we
Mm-hmm.
are a mere speck.
Mm-hmm.
That is something, standing under a cliff like that, picking up a fossil, it makes you realize just how much of a speck we really are.
Well,
We're nothing.
there's a lot of well, cliffs and caves are fascinating to me because
They are, yeah.
they're homes for humans, like Mrs. Shipley in England, right?
Yes.
She
Yeah,
lives
yeah,
in the
yeah.
cave.
Yeah.
But birds live in there as well,
Yes.
and there's a lot of Native American ruins here where they lived in. They're cave dwellers, cliff dwellers,
Yeah,
cave.
yeah.
Okay, and you would see like they would have to hike all the way up to the top to get in there. And when you go to some of these, there's one, the Gila Cliff Dwellings in New Mexico. You can actually go walk in there, which is a very rare thing. But they still have the soot on the top of the roof of the cave from when they had their fires.
Hmm.
They have some pottery they found, and then they would garden on top of the cave.
Yeah.
And so they would have to climb to go get their maize. I mean, it these people were fit, man. I mean, we are so lazy in
Yeah.
comparison to what these people did. And it's
Yes.
just mind blowing. Yet at the same time, you'll see like a hawk or an eagle or, birds, even like little swallows, live and make, like, especially if it's sandstone, make their little nest. And, so I'm like, we all lived in these places at times,
Hmm.
we really
I
did.
mean, cliff, I can't even say it. Cliff dwelling is something that has always fascinated me. I mean, when I worked in France in 1978, there were still people who were living in caves, You know, they had their
Whoa.
houses on the front of the cave, and their homes actually extended into the caves. And I
Mm.
think they probably still do live in there.
There are people that still do that. What about in the Hobbit place, New Zealand? They have those little houses like that.
Oh, it
Little
place.
the little hobbits. Yeah, there is a
Yeah.
little. There's a Hobbit garden. They're like a real like the movie set, the Hobbits.
All right.
But there are people that I think I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, in
Are there
France,
little hobbits running
they
around?
were still living. I don't know much about hobbits,
Uh-oh.
but they were still living in these cave houses. And the interesting thing was that if they wanted to extend, all they had to do was dig another hole in the cliff,
And
and
a
you could
fossil pops
extend.
out and
Yeah,
says,
yeah,
"Hey, thanks."
you could extend backwards into the cliff to have another room. You know, it's amazing.
It's kind of crazy because you think about all these underground societies too. That's what they're saying, like this Armageddon kind of feeling, that this dystopia that everyone's talking about, like, oh, people living under the streets and living in caves underneath. That's kind of like, I don't know, man. After what I've seen on in this country, I mean, we have so many potholes. We're just gonna fall down into China or what? I don't know what's gonna go. All the potholes in the road. I'm like, eh, because some of the roads are sinking. There's sinkholes, just like in Florida and stuff. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, the whole
We,
road goes down.
I'll
So
tell you what you need to Google, and there probably are other search engines available, so I won't, but you can Google the bus in Norwich that fell down a hole.
what?
A double-decker bus fell down a hole in Norwich. So just Google it and you'll see a picture of a bus like that
Wow.
fell in, because under Norwich there were chalk mines, and a bus actually fell down a hole and it ended up just like that, sticking out of a hole. So if you Google that, the bus
Oh,
that fell
wow.
down the hole in Norwich,
That's
you never know
crazy.
what's underneath the streets here.
You you never know about that in Florida, but you guys have so much going on. I mean, it's like you've got these old footprints. I mean, so family trees have to go way way back now. I mean, it would be
Well,
really fascinating to be able to go beyond like the 13, 1200s, like to
yeah,
go beyond.
I've always been fascinated with DNA
Hmm.
and whether any of the people who are dug up in archaeological digs locally are actually related to me. Because, all of my ancestors that I found so far lived within 50 miles of where I live today. But obviously, that only goes back to the most part 400 years. So I'm thinking that if my ancestors were living in this area 400 years ago, they must have been living here
600.
1400 years ago, because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
wouldn't have
So,
gone very far.
well, this is my weird thing about DNA is what happens when you check DNA from like those kind of ancient times, like maybe 2000 years ago or something.
Yeah, I'd
I
love to
wonder
know.
if our DNA will be different than the human DNA we have today. In other words, are we going to have more because we are part tree? We have a bit of DNA that's got tree in us. Oh yes. So would we have more tree because we changed? I mean, we became bigger people. We used to be little tiny people. We used to not stand up as right as we do. I mean, think about how we've shifted, right? So what was our DNA then to
Hmm.
DNA now? See?
Yeah,
So I wonder if we'd had more oh boy, I'm going to get in trouble. Like Darwin would dig it. I wish Darwin was alive right now. I think he would have a field day with DNA, with what's happening now.
yeah. I mean, DNA is fascinating. I mean, it really is.
Maybe we're
And
mushrooms.
but I don't know whether you can get DNA from a fossil. I know you can get DNA from teeth and from bones. So a normal archaeological dig will give you DNA if you've got good enough
Hmm.
preserved, bones and bones and teeth. But I don't know whether you can get it from a fossil. Um, but also I don't know whether 2000 years actually is long enough for us to have changed into that extent. I think a lot of the trouble with how they reckon we were shorter, smaller. I think a lot of that has to do with our diet. We weren't eating
Hmm.
what we eat today. So we're not
Right.
going to have big, strong bones. We're not going to, be as big, possibly. I don't know.
Or maybe we were healthier because we don't have all the crud that we have now in our
Yeah,
food, you know?
yeah,
I mean, when we're
yeah. I
eating
mean,
meat, it was clean meat, you know? But then there's the Neanderthals, and they seem to be pretty big too. So what's with that? I mean, are we
yeah. I
it's
mean,
crazy.
yeah. It is. It's a subject all on its own, just human development and
This is
how that actually came about.
That's why I'm so interested in fungus, because fungus is more ancient than dinosaurs, apparently.
All right. Yeah.
And there are
Hey.
entire communities that even go underground that we don't even see, microscopic, and
Oh
they
yes.
actually go with trees. And there's this whole, I'm so fascinated by it that I feel like maybe that's what humans are, because fungus is part animal and part vegetable or part plant, right? So they're both.
Which part is animal?
The gills. No, so like fish. I don't know, but it's like a immersion. They're not all animal, they're not all plant.
So
So
vegetarian or vegans can't eat mushrooms.
that's true. I've said that before, but they are. I know. I don't know, but um, the world of fungus is so fascinating to me because it's also connects with mold. And when you think about it, when something dies, fungus basically takes that and it is purifies. That's the
Oh yeah, yeah.
purifier, right?
Then
And
turns
cleans
it
it.
into something else. Yeah.
And it's the where energy never dies. So then what happens with this energy? How much of Anyway, this is getting trippy, but I really, that's where I believe ghosts come from. Like, so your energy,
Mushrooms.
yes, that's a good,
Have you had your tablets today?
not yet. And I haven't even had wine yet. So there it is. But you know what I mean? There's something to this that I think we still have this whole world ahead to learn about that we don't know yet, you
No. I
know?
mean, I think that is it, isn't it? I mean, laughing aside, we don't know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so many things that we have got no idea about. So many things. I mean, the one big thing, and I think I may have mentioned this before, is, when you walk into a room, how come there's an atmosphere? What is an atmosphere?
It's
Because
that gas.
sometimes you can walk into a room and you can feel very, very uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand what that is.
That
It
other
must be
sense.
something.
I believe in that.
Yeah, but
Um,
what is it? You can feel that you're not welcome, or you can feel there's an atmosphere or whatever.
well,
And there's
I trust my gut
so many.
100% on
Yeah.
things. I was telling you about our crazy drive across Oregon with this ice storm, and Nancy and I were about to push further to this one area that we thought, okay, that'll get us closer to where we are now. And all of a sudden, I just went, that's it. We're stopping right here. Done. We're not doing it because it was really picking up with wind. It was getting dark. We don't know. We've never been on this other road that we can, like we're stopping and we pulled in and you're sliding on ice and it's getting dark and you're trying to even navigate into parking lots, which is not fun, and get a hotel. And we got outside this hotel and there wasn't even a way to even get your luggage without going across ice in the parking lot at night to act. And I was like, you know what? We're going the other side of the road where Nancy wanted to go originally. I turned left. She was like, no, no, turn right. But I turned left. Well, we went back the way Nancy had that gut vibe. And I went, I'm not doing this hotel. We're going to go up here. We get to this hotel. And it was like, thank goodness there was a place I could park by the door, undo, unload because it was freezing. If I hadn't listened to our gut instinct, that gut instinct of do not go further, we would have been driving in the worst storm and probably been stuck on the side of the road in an ice storm.
Hmm.
And, there's not really place to pull over on that road. And so that's kind of that weird thing of how do we know? How does your energy know that?
Hmm.
What is your gut instinct? There's previous experience, right? But that gut instinct goes with that atmosphere of walking into a room and not feeling comfortable in a place. I don't, maybe it's something happened there. or maybe you've been there before. I don't know.
No,
I like
and
it though.
that's what I like to realize is that we don't know.
Mm,
So we don't know what's going to happen. We don't understand everything in the world. And,
mm,
we don't understand all of these fossils. We don't understand all of these creatures that used to live on the planet. We don't understand the people who made them footprints on the beach. We don't, they were humanoid, but they
mhm,
weren't humans. What were their lives like? We don't know
mm,
anything about them. So there is so much. And the thing that I love about history is that you can be so connected to it just by picking up a fossil or picking up a piece of Roman pottery or just going into a medieval church. You can actually be part of history. And
yeah.
and that to me is what it's all about. It really is because you don't know, but you can still connect to it. So
Mhm.
it's worth walking along a beach and just seeing what's under your feet.
I love it, Glynn. Everyone, norfolk-tours.co.uk is the website to go. Contact Glynn and go for a walk on the beach and find a fossil. I love
You
it.
never
It's
know.
a great chat again, Glynn. Thank you so much.
Good to speak to you.
Thank you for joining us for Big Blend Radio's English Connection show with Glynn Burrows, owner of Norfolk Tours. If you're planning a vacation to England or looking up your family history in England, visit norfolk-tours.co.uk to connect with Glynn. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.